Any persons wishing to address the City Council on any item on today's agenda may do so at this time, 2 minutes, other than the public hearing.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor of the City Council, Councilman Dotson. My name is Ahmad Rashid. I'm the president of the Round the Block Club, one of Inglewood's largest. And I'm just here to say thank you to the mayor and the city councilman for attending our block club party Saturday before last. It was a success. We appreciate you coming to visit. I applaud what you're doing with the city, moving in the right direction. Also extend an invitation to our meetings every fourth Thursday at the ICOP Center on 7th in Manchester. Councilman Dotson is a regular there, so I know it's short notice this particular Thursday, but maybe next month, if you have time on your schedule, Mr. Mayor, your constituents want to talk to you.
Okay, so this is like your first time here, but
No, it's not my first time here.
well, in the future, the first speaking part is for things that are on the agenda, and announcements like that come at the end, but I didn't want to interrupt you. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate you very much. Anyone that has a comment on any item onto the agenda may do so at this time.
Good afternoon. I notice that you're in a big rush, and so you've even limited this comment period with the budget that will take us through the entire year to 2 minutes. How pathetic is that? Typically, there are several days worth of agenda that cover the budget by department, and you're limiting it to lickety-split, quick, let's get it done, and don't even let the public comment for more than 2 minutes, along with the other 20 items on this agenda. That is about as sad can be. It shows your absolute commitment to the dictatorial lifestyle rather than democracy, because every one of those departments should have the opportunity to express and get feedback for each one of the departments from the public. That is not agendized, and I know you're looking to him because you don't want to look to me. But that's all right.
No, I didn't want to tell you that you're not talking about anything on the agenda, but go ahead.
Actually, I am. If we look down here, it is an agenda item. That is what on this agenda, unless you have a different one, which I wouldn't be surprised because that won't be the first time either.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Okay, we'll close public comment. Item 1, CSA 1 and H1.
Move allow on the payments?
Second.
And Madam Clerk, all the agencies are open.
That's correct.
All right.
City Council, Successor Agency, Housing Authority, members. Dotson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Chairman Butts.
Aye. Madam Clerk, what is the next scheduled matter?
The next scheduled matter is a public hearing to consider zoning code amendment 2017-01 to Chapter 12 of the Inglewood Municipal Code to modify marijuana cannabis regulations.
Has the notice of the hearing been given in the time, form, and manner as required by law, and do you have the affidavit on file?
Notice has been given and affidavit is on file.
Have you received any communications on the matter?
Communications have been received.
Would you receive and file them? Is there a staff report on the matter?
Yes, Mr. Chris Jackson, Senior Community and Economic Development Manager, will give the staff report.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. We have before us a public hearing to consider modifying our marijuana and cannabis regulations for the City of Inglewood. Just want to quickly give you a fast background on what's occurred from a legislation standpoint. Back in 1996, as indicated in your staff report, the state of California passed the Compassionate Use Act. That act enabled seriously ill persons to be able to possess, cultivate, and use marijuana for medical purposes. Subsequently, in 2003, Senate Bill 420, known as the Medical Marijuana Program Act, was passed, which clarified the scope of the Compassionate Use Act, as well as established the ability for counties to establish a regulatory scheme for that possession and cultivation of medical marijuana by seriously ill persons. In 2008, the City of Inglewood adopted an ordinance that prohibited the cultivation, sale, dispensing of medical marijuana at any medical marijuana dispensary association, cooperative club, delivery service, collective, medical clinic, or any other similar use involved in the sale, the possession, and cultivation and/or distribution of medical marijuana. It did allow in that in 2008, the city did, in its wisdom, allow for medical marijuana to be sold or dispensed in Inglewood from inpatient medical facilities such as hospitals or hospice facilities, and all of those subject to special use permit approval. I would note that no special use permit has been forwarded to the city, and any related use of medical marijuana in the city is not permitted at this time. When we skip over to 2016, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act was passed. It allowed for the personal recreational use of marijuana, the possession of up to 28.5 grams of marijuana or 4 grams in concentrated form for recreational use, as well as the cultivation of up to 6 plants on residential property for personal recreational use. I would note that Prop 64 prohibits the smoking or ingesting of marijuana in any public place and while driving a motor vehicle. It also prohibits smoking marijuana where smoking tobacco is prohibited and within 1,000 feet of any school, any daycare, or youth center when children are present. Prop 64, in one of the important aspects of it, it did establish a state licensing and regulatory process for commercial marijuana activities, including the retail sales, again, cultivation, delivery, distribution, and manufacturing, and testing. But it also preserved the city's ability to ban outdoor cultivation and to reasonably regulate but not ban indoor cultivation for personal use. Under Prop 64, the state will begin issuing licenses for commercial cannabis production on January 1st of 2018. There were a number of subsequent acts that kind of framed the regulatory environment. I won't go through those. Those are all listed in your staff report. But I will say this particular amendment that's coming forward proposes to change the terminology. The new terminology of marijuana now is cannabis, and that's what you will see in a lot of the regulatory information. So we see a shift of that. Also, we bring our code up to in cohesion with that word or that verbiage. Our ordinance would maintain existing exemption for medical inpatient sale and dispensing and distribution of medical cannabis subject to, again, a special use permit. And then we would allow the indoor cultivation of cannabis for personal use in concert with what the state has set forth as its regulatory environment. And we would also, in this ordinance, prohibit all commercial activity associated with cannabis production, transport, and dispensing in all zones. Absolutely all zones are prohibited. That is a summary of the staff presentation. You have the staff report as well as the support documentation. Staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that would like to make comment?
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is Tracy Sato-Atari. I'm a community organizer for the City of Inglewood from Asian American Drug Abuse Program, and I'm speaking today in support and appreciation of the city's decision to modify the marijuana cannabis regulations and to ban commercial sales, production, and distribution of marijuana. Speaking as a parent of 2 teenage boys and a facilitator for a substance abuse prevention group over at Inglewood High School, I feel that it's important to consider the youth and young children and reducing harm when considering regulations. In addition to a locked space in the home where marijuana is cultivated, there should be stipulations on where the processing of the marijuana plant for personal use is located. This space should be secured and locked where children do not have access to marijuana. The space should also include safe storage of any processed marijuana. Just a tidbit of fact, an experienced grower of marijuana can produce 300 to 400 grams from one large plant, and the state is allowing 6 plants, so that's quite a bit of marijuana there. And that equals to a year's supply for even daily users. So I would also like to see that the city consider requiring personal cultivation registration per home to track and mitigate potential problems that may come up with personal cultivation. And there's examples of regulations for personal cultivation in the following cities. The city of Fontana is requiring a permit process right now, and the city of Pomona is moving toward permit process. So if you talk to those cities, you can see what they're thinking about or what they're doing. I feel that taking steps to strengthen regulations of commercial cannabis activity will help to maintain the safety and well-being of the residents and youth of Inglewood. Your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Carol Almeida, and together with Tracy Saruwatari, I serve as a community organizer for the Asian American Drug Abuse Program. Legalization of marijuana, be it recreational or medicinal, opens the floodgates to easy access by youth. Increased access translates to increased use. In a nationwide survey, 72% of teenagers whose parents use marijuana use it also. Conversely, only 20% of those whose parents had never used marijuana had used it themselves. Latest research shows that every day, 3,287 teenagers use marijuana or cannabis for the first time. Research data, be they quantitative or anecdotal in nature, show marijuana poses a specific risk to the developing brain and is correlated with poorer school performance, higher dropout rates, and impaired verbal, cognitive, and attention performance. In the evolving science of addiction, research findings would show that youth are more likely to become addicted to cannabis than adults, 17% more, while adults it's only 9%. Youth, in the state of Colorado, one of the very first states to legalize marijuana, youth past month use increased by 20% after legalization, thus making the state of Colorado #1 in terms of youth use in the past month. Calls to the Rocky Mountain Poison and Drug Center for marijuana exposure increased more than 70% from the time of legalization, and this involved children below the age of 8. Today, we stand here before you to show our appreciation to the City Council for choosing to go into the policy direction of banning marijuana. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close public comment. Any council comments?
Yes, Mayor.
Sir, Councilman Franklin, District 4.
A couple of comments, if I can have Mr. Jackson approach the podium. In your staff report, there was reference that there has been no prior public comments relative to this item. It's my understanding that the Planning Commission had a public hearing on August 3rd, and public did make public comments. So this would be the second turnaround.
That's correct. That verbiage was meant to identify if we had received, as of the publication of that report, anything relative to the hearing that's coming, that you're conducting today. But to your point, yes, there was a full public hearing at the Planning Commission prior to, and they're recommending the ordinance to.
Also, for a point of clarification regarding the proposed ordinance, there was a reference of the how much footage would have to be from a school for the use of. My recollection is that the staff report said 600 feet as opposed to 1,000 feet. Are we now imposing 1,000 feet in this?
Should be 1,000 feet, correct.
Finally, thank you very much. I just want to thank Mr. Ken Campos and your staff, Mr. Jackson, for your due diligence on establishing the language that we needed to make sure we had some teeth, enforceable, and then also in talking with the city attorney, we're identifying that there's actually currently in our Inglewood Municipal Code, there is a fine or fees that we can impose that we can also go after the current medical marijuana dispensaries as well as the future ones for recreational. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I want to affirm the categorical exemption for EA-CE-2017-64.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Council members Dotson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Butts.
Aye. Motion to waive further reading.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Council members Dotson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye, I'll introduce the ordinance. Consent calendar, items 2 through 21, CSA 2 and CSA 3.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
City Council and successor agency members, Dotson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Chairman Buds.
Aye, DR1.
Staff report recommending adoption of a resolution approving and adopting the fiscal year 2017-18 annual operating budget.
Move to allow the budget presentation.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Council members, Dotson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye.
Evening, afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here with my team today to present the fiscal year 17-18 operating budget. This is a monumental task that we take on each year, and even though it says it's the city manager's recommended budget, I couldn't do it without the team of staff that helped me, and I'd like to start off the presentation by recognizing them, and some of which are out in the audience. First of all, first and foremost, David Esparza, our CFO and Assistant City Manager, who's sitting to my right. Kiona Buchanan, who's a Senior Budget Analyst, who's also sitting here and who will be part of the presentation. A new member of our staff, Kenyetta Hinton, who's a Budget Analyst, who's sitting out in the audience there. We have Yakima Decatur, who's our Deputy to the City Manager. We have Yolanda Douglas, who's the Police Services Analyst. Louis Atwell, who's a Public Works Director. Robert Brayton, who's a project consultant. Samuel Brown, who's a program specialist. And last but not least, my assistant, Ms. Tanisha Johnson, who's a senior management assistant. So I want to thank all of them for all their hard work and commitment to making this happen. With that, we'll get started.
A virtual cast of thousands.
It is. Everybody in City Hall contributes. Let's see. How do I do this? Let's see.
You can just hit the space bar.
Okay. So one more.
Long presentation.
Is it on? Let's see.
When all else fails, the space bar is 100%.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. So what I'm about to give you is the general overview first, and we'll get into some details as we move along. But our 17-18 shortfall consists of the following situation. Our revenues, next slide. Oh, here he comes. Okay. Oh, it's working now. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience, audience. So our revenues for this upcoming fiscal year are...
Behind you.
Oh, my goodness. Artie, this is hilarious.
I know. Okay. All right, add some humor to this. Okay, so our proposed revenues are $110,216,860. Our proposed expenditures are $127,943,354, which is leaving us with a shortfall of about $17,726,494. I'll get into the details of how we got here forward. Most of the increases are due to costs that are outside the city's control. One which is within our control is the salaries and benefits line item. Currently, our salaries and benefits have increased due to the increase in increased costs related to MOUs. We recently completed our negotiations with the police officer and police management associations. We've also attempted to restore services in the city to bring back additional city staff. In addition, so the three areas are, and we've also we've attempted this year is to remain competitive in the market, in the labor market, by adjusting certain salaries so that we can compete to bring the best and brightest professionals into the city. Everybody's setting me up for failure here.
And I would suggest by paper.
Paper then. The next item that is contributing to our shortfall is our public employee retirement cost. According to the California Public Policy Center, a think tank in Orange County, most of the municipalities will see contributions to PERS nearly double by 2023. In fiscal year 2016-17, local governments contributed $44 billion to PERS. The city of Inglewood PERS costs have increased 47% over the last 5 years and are expected to grow 53% over the next 5 years. Our CalPERS annual costs for retirement costs for 17-18 are projected to be $20,562,122. This represents a $2,621,516 increase for fiscal year 17-18. Our healthcare costs have also increased. Healthcare expenses continue to increase as our retirees are living longer, and the claims experience for our active employees has been higher in the past few years, which has caused an increase in premiums paid. Staff is currently negotiating with a new provider in an effort to reduce healthcare costs for 2017-18. If we're successful at doing this, our cost for the new provider, we would actually save about $3.7 million. Los Angeles County fire contractors also increased over the last year. They normally increase their costs by COLA each year. In addition, they have additional benefit costs that they pass on to the city, and that cost will be an additional $1,295,000. Our general liability costs have also increased about $5.1 million, a 9% increase. And our workers' compensation costs have also increased about 5%, but it's important to note that our workers' comp claims have reduced significantly over the last year. Got a number of administrative What I'd like to now do is give you a general overview of some of the increases that are included in the budget. We've added 8 full-time and .80 full-time equivalent positions within the Mayor and Council Division, the Administration Department, Human Resource Department, and the Finance Department. In addition, we've increased the cost of training and contract services. Under public services, we've added 4 full-time and 5.50 full-time equivalent positions within the Public Works, Parks and Rec, and Library Services Department. We've also increased contractual obligations for sanitation services, annual water pressure contract, and homeless initiatives. We've also, as I said earlier, added staff back to bring our library hours back to its original hours. We've also added additional expenses for fleet purchases. In public safety, we've added 3 full-time positions and additional expenses for the public computer-aided dispatch system, which is known as CAD. I'd like to turn over to David Esparza to go over some of our overall expenditures.
Actually, I'll step in.
Revenues first.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. I'll be presenting to you our fiscal year 17-18 revenue information. The total citywide revenues for fiscal year 17-18 is projected to be $210,850,730. This slide provides a snapshot of the citywide revenues by fund, percentage, and amount. As you can see, 52% or a little more than half is allocated to the general fund, which leads us to the next slide. The general fund budget is $110,216,860. This slide provides a glance of the general fund revenues by category, percentage, and amount. I'd also like to note that our fiscal year 2018 general fund revenues are $7 million or 7% higher than our fiscal year 2017. Of these categories, the revenue sources with the most significant increases are within, as noted, the other revenue category, which includes $17.5 million, an additional $3 million, for the City of Champions Revitalization Project revenues. Our card club revenues of approximately 5.8 is an additional 1.2 million, and the motor vehicle in lieu of 11.4 is an additional 633. All other categories had moderate but stable revenue increases, which leads us to the next slide, which is our revenue discussion. I'll provide a brief overview of our fiscal year 18 revenues for the following categories: property, sales, UUT, card club, and motor vehicle in lieu. Of the property taxes, they are estimated to be $17.7 million, which is approximately $324,000 or 2% higher than last fiscal year. This increase is largely attributed to the net taxable value increase of 5.5 or 6% on the assessed values of all taxable properties in Inglewood. The sales tax revenues are projected to be $15.9 million in fiscal year 17-18. This is an increase of $381,000 or 3% from fiscal year 16-17. This increase is attributed to the general consumer goods category, our restaurants and hotels, and the auto and transportation industries. Our UUT taxes are projected to be $15.4 million for fiscal year 17-18, which is $225,000 or 1.5% higher than our current fiscal year. This increase is attributed to the UUT tax for our cable and our gas specifically. Of our card club license fees, as like 2017, we've added the card club license fee revenue category to highlight the significant increases that we've had over the years. Our card club license fees are projected to be $5.8 million in 17-18, which is a $1.2 million or 26% increase when compared to our current fiscal year. This increase is attributed to the increase in the number of gaming tables with the reopening of the Hollywood Park Casino. So we've seen growth, significant growth in the millions over the last 2 years for our card club revenues. And final, the revenue category, I'll be speaking to the motor vehicle in lieu tax. The motor vehicle in lieu taxes are estimated to be $11.4 million, which is approximately $633,000 higher than our current adopted budget. That concludes our revenues portion, and now I will turn it over to David to speak to our expenditures.
Good afternoon, David Esparza. I will talk about the expenditures for fiscal year 2017-18. This first slide shows the proposed citywide expenditures by funding type, amount, and percentage. You can see that the general fund is the largest single segment of the revenue expenditures. Then you have enterprise funds at almost 21%, block grant assessment districts, capital projects, and special revenue as well. All proposed department expenditures by amounts and percentages. Here again, it's the that same amount of the pie chart before, broken into the various departments that will be using those funds. Now these are total expenditures. So you see the police department, public works constitute the largest shares. Police at 26.9, the public works at 24.3% of total expenditures. Other categories are block grant, residential sound insulation, capital projects, city administration, information technology, and finance. These are the general fund proposed general fund department expenditures by amounts and percentages as well. You can see that of the $110 million in general fund total expenditures, police, are allocated about 49% of that, $62.7 million. Public Works, 9.4 at $12 million. Parks and Library, 8.9% at $11 million. And then the other departments as well, broken down into smaller segments. Finance at $7.3 million at 5.7 million, or 7%. The enterprise funds, which are developed through various services, sanitation, sewer, parking, and water, you can see that the revenue and expenditures there are are listed for next fiscal year. The water fund shows that a negative balance of $3.6 million, which is covered by a loan from the general fund. All
right, thank you, David. Each year, what we do is, as part of our staff presentations, we do a 5-year forecast of expenditures and revenues. Staff, when we're preparing this 5-year forecast, we're very conservative in our cost. So if you can see, when they're doing our 5-year forecast in this chart, it shows that we will have a shortfall at $16 million for 18-19, a shortfall of $13 million for fiscal year 19-20, and a shortfall of $16 million for 2021, and a shortfall of $18 million in 21-22. As I said, these numbers are very conservative. The increase in expenditures are due mainly to the PERS costs that I talked about earlier, which are projected to more than double in the next 5 years. The good story is in the next slide, and that is, even though we budget our projections very conservatively, what we've shown since 2012-13 is, while the council's approved the budget with the use of reserves, the city has come out at the end of the year with more revenues than were projected and less expenditures than were projected. So we've ended fiscal year 12 and 13, 13, 14, 14, 15, and 15, 16 without using any reserves. We're currently reviewing our 16, 17 budget, and
Let me interrupt for 1 second. It's probably more significant to note we've ended the year with a surplus in those years.
yes, and
Okay,
thanks for that clarification.
and I want to make a point.
Yeah.
The point is that a budget is a forecast. It's the best guess we can make based on historical data of how much money we expect to take in, new revenue sources that we see on the horizon, and expenditures that we expect to occur in a fiscal year. And so what it is, it's a forecast. And we always take the most conservative forecast so that we don't get caught short, and we know the most that we would have to spend for reserves in a given year. And for that reason, every year we forecast a shortfall. But if you look at history, in each one of those years, we actually ended up with a surplus, meaning we added more fund to the general fund unobligated balance. And so it's not going to be any different in these outlying years. We take the most pessimistic view of what might happen with our finances, and we plan to plug that with reserves as necessary. That's why it's important to have a robust general fund reserve in case things happen that you have no control over and revenues don't manifest themselves. For instance, if there's an earthquake that shuts down commerce in the city for 30, 60 days, you need to have reserves to be ready to cover that shortfall. So I really think this is an important thing to note, that while we forecast deficits, we seldom ever experience them. All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Field,
And
go
that's
ahead.
a perfect segue into our next slide. David's going to talk about our reserve history.
Okay, yes. This slide shows how the actions by the mayor and council have replenished our general fund reserves. And you can see that, in fiscal year 2010-11, we were at 13.3. We had a modest increase in the next year, on and on and on, and into 2014-15, it reached as high as $43.5 million. The use of reserves brought it down to 29.6, and then this year we're projecting it to end at $23 million in reserves. Now, what was mentioned earlier, the refinancing of some of our obligations will allow us to put an additional $35 million into our reserves, which will bring it to $52 million as we look at fiscal year 2017-18.
And I'd like to make another point. Structurally, we've been balanced most every year that in the last 5 years, and there was one year when we made a capital expenditure that took us into reserves. But the reality is the city makes a lot of discretionary decisions to improve the quality of life for residents. For instance, for the last 3 years, I believe, we've been allocating an extra $1 million to $1.5 million outside of our gas tax to accelerate the replenishment of roadways, particularly in our neighborhoods. We have a roof on the city yard that is 44 years old, and it has leaked for the last 6 years, and we're going to spend $1 million to replenish that straight out of cash from the city. So we do make conscious decisions with reserve money to do things to accelerate the renewal of our infrastructure, to do things that improve the quality of life in our city. And that's, part of what we do with reserves. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Esparza.
That takes us to our next slide, which is capital improvement projects, which is exactly what you were talking about, Mr. Mayor. You can see in this one how the capital improvement projects are divided by the different funds that the city receives. A total of $18.5 million worth of capital improvement projects. We have, the different ones, Measure R. A lot of these state money. There's general fund at $3.6 million, state transportation, HUD, CDBG funds, and other grants that basically fund those capital projects. This next slide shows where those, what constitutes those projects. The $18.5 million. You see that we are spending 74,000, on ADA construction, facilities, projects. There's 23 of them. Parks and open spaces, sewer system improvements, sidewalks and walkways, street lighting, roadway safety, streets and roadways, transit stop improvements, water system improvements. So you can see the number of projects the city is undertaking through its Public Works Department and the total amount that has been allocated to each one of those areas. Some of the major new fiscal 2018 capital improvement projects: Sentinel Avenue improvements, street resurfacing and repairs, North La Brea Avenue improvements, Imperial Highway improvements, streets and alleys rehabilitation, and local streets improvements as well.
So as I said earlier, we were going to talk about how we were going to close the general fund gap. And with that, we're going to use $11,526,494 in the use of reserves. As I talked about earlier, we're going to save $3.7 million in our health care cost if we are successful in negotiating our new health care provider. And then also what we do each year is, while we budget for our full capacity in terms of the staffing needs, we know that certain positions that people retire and that certain positions aren't recruited for right at the beginning of the year. So based on history, we know that we will most likely save another $2.5 million in future vacancy savings. And with that, that's our gap closing measure for 17-18 budget.
And Mr. Fields, also, if you go back to this previous slide, the fact of the matter is, baked into that $11 million forecast use of reserves, that will only occur if revenues are realized at their projections and expenditures meet the projections. Also baked into that 11 million, there are discretionary projects that we choose to do because we feel they need to be done now and financed with reserves as necessary. For instance, the $1 million to repair the roof on the service center to protect the employees from possible mold infections, $500,000 to start purchasing the total renovation of our police fleet. We have things like that baked in that we could choose not to do, that we choose to do because we feel this is the time to renovate the city and move forward.
Right, Mayor, and as I said earlier, every year we've projected the use of reserves as we've done today, and since I've been here, those reserves have not been used except for those discretionary projects that you mentioned earlier.
Are there any other questions of the council?
Just to say that obviously, this is a living document, as the mayor said. And in the past few years, we've seen, what we anticipated as using in terms of reserves. We hadn't actually used them, correct? And like the mayor said, we're basically guessing, and that's okay. It's an intelligent guess, but just to paint the correct picture, I mean, the city is actually in the best shape since I've been here. So that's just good news, and thank you guys for the presentation.
Councilman Franklin?
Yes, I also just want to piggyback with the staff's report, because this council is the eyes and ears of the residents, and that we've expressed great concerns regarding capital improvement projects, and you've taken it to heart and been able to intertwine the funding sources to be able to meet those needs. And again, I would thank the mayor also for reaching out to allow us to have that additional $1 million incorporated in the budget for rotating doing the streets for each councilman district, which is substantially an improvement, and looking forward for Van Ness and Imperial Highway and future Prairie to be done as well. Thank you.
All right. Councilman Padilla?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that, it is refreshing to see the difference that a day makes, or a couple of years makes, here in the city of Inglewood. When you look around, you drive through the city, and you see the changes, simple as what we're looking at on Century Boulevard, all the way from La Cienega going east. And I'm glad to see the CIPs, you know, specifically in my district when we're looking at Centinela and La Brea. And all these type of changes that are occurring in the city of Inglewood, you know, it takes funding, it takes money, it takes, you know, financial strategies, you know, on how we're gonna, you know, make this happen. And I want to thank Mr. Esparza, his staff, the city manager, the mayor's office, everybody here on the dais that works together to take a look at how we can get this stuff done in a timely manner, but do it so that we are responsible and really taking into account our financial situation. And it's brighter than it's ever been. So thank you for your staff report, and I want to thank everybody that was involved in making that happen.
Councilman Dodson, District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be short. I want to thank the whole budget committee and the city manager for a great budget report. And I'm truly grateful with the mayor with the extra $1 million so we can do some of these streets that I have in my district. And I'm so hoping this year that I'll be able to do some of the alleys because they are in bad shape as well. So other than that, I'm very grateful to be a part of this council and this great budget, because I know that in the end we'll do just like we did before. Our general fund will be intact. Thank you very much.
And in closing, I want to tell you it's very important that the council and staff have really been prudent and looked for every opportunity to maximize revenues, because there are unexpected things that happen. You know, we know what the condition of the streets are, and we are committed to accelerating that replenishment process, the sidewalks, we trim our trees. But sometimes things happen, as we found out this year, that PERS within the next 3 years will double the individual cities' contributions to the retirement system. We prudently, in past years and just this last year, we made a catch-up payment for the unfunded liability that they assessed to the cities. What they did was go around, look at the people that you have working there, look at the people who have retired, and then they said, oh, well, you have an unfunded liability portion of thus and such. Most cities took the payment plan and they spent $800,000 for this year. We paid over $10 million. 10 million? $10 million for our unfunded portion, because we save money that way, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars by doing it that way. So that being said, and what I'm getting at, it's important that cities are looking for revenues because unexpected things like this happen. So come 2020, when our PERS contributions double, we will have our stadium revenues online, and that will take care of it ostensibly. But we have people in this town that in a sense it says, well, we're doing good enough and we shouldn't worry about getting more revenue opportunities for the city. That's why we're working on the Clippers ENA, because we don't want to just be getting by. We want to make sure that our residents are comfortable, that our city is ready to confront the unknowns of the future. And we have people that are foolish enough to say that we should take the most revenue generating possibility block of land that's been vacant for 20 years, 22 acres has been vacant for over 20 years, that's generated no property tax, no jobs, no sales tax. And they're foolish enough to say we should put a use that is not revenue producing that doesn't even fit there. And so what I'm really want to make clear is that the council's responsibility is to make prudent decisions with land use, economic opportunity, and to provide public safety. And we do that, and we take it very seriously. So it's easy for people to get up and say, oh, I think that you should, when they don't have to pay the bottom line to meet the bills. That's very easy. So I want to thank the staff. We've made it very clear where we are, and great job, you guys. Thank you.
Move adoption.
Second. Madam Clerk.
Council members, Dodson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye. A1.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a closed session regarding conference with the labor negotiator for the city. The labor negotiator was Jose Cortez, the Human Resource Director. The name of the organizations representing the employees were SEIU, IMEO, IEO, IPOA, IPMA, and IPCMA. As to that, discussion was held and direction given to staff. The next item was closed session number 2 regarding the workers' compensation claim of Ann Jimenez. There was 2 claims, and there's a request for a motion to approve settlement in the amount of $60,000.
So move.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Council members Dodson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye. CI 1.
Initiative by Councilmember Ralph Franklin recommending approval of the city sponsorship for the 2017 District 4 Annual Christmas Toy and Food Drive Celebration.
Move approval.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Council members Dodson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye.
Thank you, council members.
You're welcome. CS 4.
Approval of the minutes for the successor agency meeting held on July 11, 2017, and July 25, 2017.
Move approval.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Successor agency members Dodson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin. Chairman Buds.
Aye. The Finance Authority is in session, I believe,
And housing, too.
and the Housing,
Yes, everything.
and the Parking Authority. F1.
H2, approval of the minutes for the Housing Authority meeting for July 11th, 2017, and July 25th, 2017.
Move approval.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Housing Authority members Dodson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Chairman Buds.
Aye. F1.
Approval of the minutes for the Finance Authority meeting held July 11th, 2017.
Move approval.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Finance Authority members Dodson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Chairman Buds.
Aye. P1.
Approval of the minutes for the Parking Authority meeting held on July 21st.
Move approval.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Parking Authority members Dodson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Chairman Buds.
Aye. Any person who wishes to address the council on any matter not covered on the agenda may do so at this time. 1 minute.
Council, I'm back again, Mr. Rashid, President of the Rounded Block Club. Like I said earlier, I commend you guys for doing a great job leading the city in the right direction, and thank you for continuing our block party. But the other item I wanted to talk about today was you kind of talked up on it with the budget, the island on Crenshaw between 82nd and 84th. It looks a mess. And as I travel throughout Los Angeles County, I look at the hub city, Compton. Beautiful sign, beautiful flowers. As soon as you come off the 91 freeway, welcome to Compton. Artesia, Cerritos, right down the street here in Hawthorne. And you know, it kind of wonders, any of you guys even driven over there? Because it's been like that for a while. I work closely with the councilman on getting that big blue sign up that let people know when they're coming out of the hood and into the wood. And we want to beautify that. When I took over 2 years ago from Mr. Burt, a local celebrity, if you will,
Legendary.
my primary agenda was beautification. So I worked closely with Councilman Dotson. I admire his leadership in getting that sign put back up that had been vacant since the space shuttle came through. But the residents over there.
We're going to have to cut you short, but you're talking about the triangle.
I ran out of.
Right. You're talking about the triangle plot of land
in the middle of Crenshaw.
at the split for Crenshaw Drive and Crenshaw?
From 82nd to 84th.
In the medium there.
Where you drop down the
He's
hill.
talking about the median. You're not talking about the half acre.
The medium, the island. Right.
Okay, George says he's got it. And the councilman says he's got it. I'll say no more.
Okay. So
All
I
right,
just wanted
thank
to make
you,
you
sir.
aware, the residents over there, they looking to see that beautified.
I get it.
All right,
I
thank you.
get it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So my name is Woodrow, and I'm a resident here in Council District 1, and I'm here to represent Uplift Inglewood. Have you all heard of that?
I think so.
Think so. All right. You haven't? Heard of it.
Okay, sir, can you?
So we're here to talk about our coalition. Our coalition is and our focus. Our focus is on affordable housing, rent control, and tenant protections here in the city. I haven't heard any of that talked about on your agenda. And I did hear the mayor mention that it's easy to talk about things, but when it comes down to it, whoever's paying the bills has to bear the burden. And I agree with you, man. So as a tenant in this city, I haven't heard anybody talking about tenant protections for those of us who rent here in the city. So I would love for you to add that to your agenda so we can have a full discussion about how we can maintain our community and make sure that we take care of the most vulnerable people in our city, including tenants.
Appreciate it.
Hi, Rena Granberry. I'm from District 4, and I'm here with the Uplift Inglewood as well, and just asking yet again just to have the council to prioritize housing. You know, it is getting harder and harder to hold on to being a resident here after 22 years, fully invested with both my children in IU, Inglewood Unified School District schools. And I hear what you're saying, like he said, about, you know, generating revenue. And I think that's great. And I love where we're going with the city. I think my problem is with the NEA, public land going to private developers. I just
Hold
don't.
on, ma'am, I'll give you your time. There's no public land going to private developers.
If it was-
It's
okay.
going to be purchased, and I'm going to freeze your
Okay,
time
that's
so that you totally understand.
Okay.
The land that we're talking about, that public land, that was purchased with FAA money way back in the day, probably, I don't know, around $200,000 an acre. That land now is valued at about 1.6, 1.7 million an acre. For the city to get that land back to put housing on it, we would have to buy it at today's rate. So what does that mean? We'd spend around $38 million to buy land that was worth about $2 million when it was purchased. Then we'd have to get into some deal with someone that could afford to make money putting affordable housing on it after we got out of our agreement with the FAA to not put aircraft noise incompatible use there. So the city would have to come up with an area of $38 million. Then you'd have to find somebody that could make money buying it from us at close to $38 million and say we gave them a subsidy. I doubt that that would pencil out. So I want to make that clear. One, there's no land being given to anyone. Two, for the city to obtain it back would be one, breaking an agreement with the FAA. Two, paying a prohibitive price for that land. And three, trying to put sound insulated homes on an area of land that we had purchased because nobody wanted to live there. So I wanted to make that clear. Now you carry on.
So as we're moving forward, I'm just asking for more, you know, response to community, just how we feel as young people. I actually give the city lots of kudos for all the senior housing that's coming. I see senior housing. We have a whole bunch of senior housing. We got it on Florence. We got senior housing, and I appreciate that. And I just feel like young families and those of us that are in the middle, trying to pull ourselves up from the bootstraps, we need a little bit too. We don't want to be the forgotten population here.
Got you. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate that.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Doug Smith, and I'm an attorney at Public Counsel. We work with community-based organizations and affordable housing developers across LA County. And I just want to quickly follow up on what my colleague just said about the sale, and indeed it would be the sale of land for public good. This principle is actually embedded in state law in something called the Surplus Land Act. It's a law that requires cities to prioritize the sale or lease of the surplus land for affordable housing or parks and open space. Concerned that Inglewood's code sections regulating the sale of city land appear to not implement or adhere to the procedural requirements of the Surplus Land Act. So we will submit a letter with some more information about our concerns, but we want to just encourage full implementation of this law and urge the city to follow the Surplus Land Act requirements in the disposition of all surplus land, including those sites that are being considered for
That
the
won't
arena.
happen, I'll tell you that right now, but go ahead. Will not happen.
All right, so my name is Yvonne Figueroa. I work with LA Voice and also part of the Uplift Inglewood Coalition. And I am in support of Homes Before Arenas. We want to be clear that we are not anti-development. We are advocates for responsible community-serving development. Based on deep input and resident engagement, we have developed a comprehensive proposal. We would like the public land that is being considered for the Clippers Arena to instead be used for true community investments, such as youth centers, senior centers, and homegrown business incubation centers. We have been told that the sites are not suitable for housing, but the city has yet to produce any evidence to support this claim. In fact, we have done our own research that suggests that the sites may be used for housing. We will speak to each one of the three barriers to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Kathy Deppie. I'm part of the Holy Faith Episcopal Church, and I'm here with Uplift Inglewood in support of homes before arenas. I want to follow up on what my colleagues just said about public land and the potential to prioritize that housing that we really need in this community. It's been suggested these sites are not suitable for housing because of the zoning, but this is not true. While many of the sites are currently zoned M1L, the city does have the legal discretion to change the zoning when appropriate to support housing development. Inglewood's adopted housing element expressly contemplates zone changes as a strategy to address housing needs. And there is an actual recent precedent in the city doing just that. The Hollywood Park specific plan involved an ordinance that changed the site's zoning from a designation that did not permit residential use to a new zone that will enable mixed-use residential development, right?
Thank you, ma'am.
If the city can do that for a site right across the street, it can do the same in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, residents of Inglewood and those before me. I'm going to refrain from using childish banter to call names. I'm not on the playground anymore. But I do want to say that I am Michael with the Youth Justice Coalition, and I'm here with Uplift Inglewood to support the Homes Before Arenas. I want to address some rumors about these sites. It has been suggested that the FAA grant assurances and aviation assessment prevent housing on these sites. We have found no reason to believe that is true. First of all, the city has not provided any actual evidence that holds this with true. So we did our own research as well. We found that we reviewed sample grants assurance from the FAA as well as sample aviation assessments. These sites are required to maintain noise-compatible land uses, but that does not appear to require an outright ban on housing development. Federal, state, and local regulations all indicate that residential properties can be considered compatible at the 65 to 70 decibel range if noise insulation standards are met. We believe housing would be compatible with grant assurances. Definitely, no problem.
Your time's up, sir. Thank you.
Have a great day, council members.
Mayor, City Council, my name's
How are you
Leon.
today?
I'm good. My name's Leon Norris. I'm a small business owner. I'm also part of the Uplift Inglewood Coalition in support of Homes Before Arenas. Since we now know that with political will, housing could be built on the sites, we believe that this is the best possible option for Inglewood. We're facing a housing crisis. According to the City of Inglewood's own housing element, 38% of Inglewood renters and 15% of Inglewood homeowners are overpaying for housing. That is to say, more than half of Inglewood residents are already burdened by the cost of housing. Before we invest in any more developments that will intensify the already squeezed housing market, we need to prioritize the very need for affordable housing of our city's current workforce. We urge the council to comply with the state law, to prioritize affordable housing, but most importantly, to meet the community's needs for stable, affordable, and workforce housing. We urge you to prioritize Homes Before Arenas.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hello, Mayor, members of the City Council, and the public. My name is the Reverend Francisco Garcia, and I'm the rector at Holy Faith Episcopal Church here in Inglewood. We're an institution of faith and a community organization that's been here for over 100 years. And so we're a community rooted in the message of Jesus, which seeks to stand with the least of these among us. And naturally, we're concerned about the economic pressures that members of our parish and our neighbors are facing. Just last week, I heard from one of my own parishioners whose rents have been raised yet again. And so she's a working mother. She's a professional, college educated. Her and her husband, they don't know how long they can stay in the city of Inglewood. And they love this community. And they want to support the vision of this community. But the vision of this community cannot continue without the residents that make up the city, the working people of the city. And so therefore, we urge you to heed and to sit down and to speak with members of our coalition. We are residents, we are people of faith, we are working people, and we want development to include those
who work here, who live here, and those who need, sustainable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Parker Jr., Vietnam veteran, 66, 67, also a conscious subject. Everybody's talking about money, finance, need money, making money hands over foot. You're trying to figure out how to offset your expenses, acquire more. I've been screaming money since day one I ever got up here. You got a gold mine out there in the Veterans Administration where the federal government is keeping their money, which is the VA. Money that's theirs. You're housing them out there at whatever on the dollar. You got a gold mine right here. You wouldn't have to hustle for a damn penny if you listen to me and go out there and look at it. You tell me that's the federal level. Everybody tells me, well, that's the federal level. What we can do? Well, if the federal level can come down here and tell us to spy on each other, if you see a package, or if you can rent them space at state level, federal, whatever, for $300,000 a month, and you got a gold mine, you penny pinching, you don't know big money when you see it.
Right.
And no, don't tell me I'm right. Just be quiet. I've been talking 5 years, and the first time I'm right.
You're
give me my time. You give me my time, sir.
You're over your time, sir.
Now you do,
Mr. Parker.
We can tell. I have been here telling you about what's going on. They can trickle down.
Mr.
Let
Parker.
us trickle up. You go up there and you stand up for us and get our money.
Mr. Parker.
Talk about a federal and state level. And you can't do nothing about it. That's me not racketeering and corrupt.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and staff. Ray Davis, 2nd District. Right already. That date getting pushed back a year will hopefully make a positive difference. Had opened up on time, who knows? We probably would have had to rush a lot of things through. Productive meeting, a lot of things got put out on the table, and for me, I'm torn with the issue of affordable housing in Inglewood. Folks got to have a place to live, and they shouldn't be gouged. But in previous meetings, it seems as though the council's addressing that. But it looks as though that parcel of land, it's kind of like a non-starter. If we have to pay all this millions of dollars per acre, how are we going to come up with that and still call it affordable? I would say the folks that are, pro housing, you guys are going to have to get yourselves some rich uncles to buy that land.
My name is Diane Sombrano, and at the beginning of this meeting, you called me a liar saying the budget wasn't on the agenda, and guess what? You proved me right again. You do that a lot, and it's really kind of sad and amusing at the same time. Now, if I didn't know about the history of the Housing Authority of Los Angeles and David, I might actually believe some of that stuff. But I know and read the Wendy Gruhl study. So, yeah, smoke and mirrors and fake numbers. But I'm going to go ahead and address the Brown Act violation that you did today, and somebody else will be doing that later in writing, probably. But I'm also going to let you know that because of the next-gen aircraft that's coming out, and because of Ontario and all those other things that Laxon and RSAC worked for, there is a possibility that the Part 160 study could make it a possibility that, in fact, those homes would not be in the contours. But you're going to rush me off as quick as you can, because you know I'm right. And you like to tell people for hours on end that I don't know what I'm talking about. But I've been right an awful lot. And here it comes.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown.
My name is Willie A.G., and I live in this beautiful city of Inglewood. But what I want to talk about is this so-called farmer's market over here on Market Street. I've been watching it pretty close for the last 4 or 5 months. The fruits, I wouldn't buy them. I don't know who owns it, but whoever owns it, I tell you, I don't know what kind of contract the city had with them, but whatever it is, I'd like to see it changed, and I'd like to see the merchants on Market Street open up and let the people come back, and maybe we won't have to put 4 policemen up there every day that they're up there. It's a waste of time, and if there's any way that the council can deal with it, I sure appreciate it if you did. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Ms. Sly.
Mayor, City Council, and staff. Rick, I just wanted to admonish the council in your quest to create extra revenue. I live in the beautiful city of Inglewood. I would like you to consider first doing no harm to the residents that are already here and to provide the need of the residents that are already here rather than, and I still feel that there's going to be eminent domain mixed up in this contract with the new basketball stadium coming in. This is so unfair. So I'd like to just say.
There won't, Ms. Sly, but not for residences.
You're considering raising money for the city. Please think, do no harm to the residents that are already here paying salaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sly. Okay, well, we'll close public comment. Are there any council comments? Councilman Dodson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want the gentleman, Rashid, after the meeting, you see me, I have pictures in my camera that I've been taking to turn into Public Works to give them some idea what I'd like to see done there. The other is I want to thank the Los Angeles Rams staff and cheerleaders and Molly Higgins and Maria Camacho for coming out to Warren Lane this morning for their day of service. I was out there and we put in some real work today because we painted in front of the school, put in new plants, and believe me, it was a job. I want to thank our staff because Thomas Bond and his staff was out there taking pictures. So it was a wonderful day, and I'm very grateful to the Rams organization because they didn't have to do that. That was something that they volunteered to do, and they did a great job at it. And I want to thank Briarwood for inviting me to their town hall meeting. They had some very interesting things going on that we talked about. And about this, I never say anything about these, but Uplift Inglewood, I don't know what that is, but where were these people when most of the area was called the Bottoms, when we had nothing but apartments in there? Crime rate was through the roof. So I've been here long enough to see what has happened to Inglewood. And I don't know how long you've been here, but Inglewood has changed tremendously in the last 5 years from where it had been the last 20 or 30 years. So I guess everybody have their own opinion, but my opinion is we can't do any better than what we're doing right now. And it's getting better every day. And progress is going to happen no matter what we do or say. Once it starts, progress is, that's what progress is. It moves forward. And a city moves forward or it dies. As simple as that. So thank you everybody for coming out. I always enjoy the comments. So keep coming out and keep bringing your comments and have a great rest of your day.
Councilman Padilla, District 2.
Great, thank you, Mayor. First off, I want to thank last week, and I'm sure Councilman Morales will talk about the PATH housing ribbon cutting. Great event, and I'll let Councilman Morales touch on that because he worked hard with staff to make that a reality. It's a great opportunity for our city. But I also, today, you know, when you look at the consent calendar and everything we approved, you look at our budget, approving that, you know, we as your representatives are getting the job done. We're working hard, and we work 7 days a week. We are committed to continuing to make Inglewood the city of champions. the place that people want to come to, not just drive through, as I always say. Inglewood is on the move. Inglewood is making positive changes that so many other communities around us. I was at an event over the weekend in Pomona, and folks up there are like, you guys are on fire. You know, you got a council, you got staff, you got folks working together. And believe it or not, we have a community that supports what we're doing, that says, let's continue to make Inglewood the city of champions. So we're working for you and with you to make this transition so that when people think about Inglewood, they think about positive things. No more thinking about, you know, the past and the issues that were there. It's about Inglewood moving forward. And as your elected officials, we're going to continue to make decisions that are best for the city of Inglewood. And at the end of the day, that's what's important to each and every one of us, is to make those tough decisions. And I can tell you, there are times where people say, you know, hey, you know, and I get it, not everybody's going to agree with you, but as your elected officials, we do what we believe is the best thing for the city of Inglewood, not just today, but 5, 10, 20 years from now, because we're not going anywhere. We're all going to continue to stay here in the beautiful city of Inglewood. So with that, thank you and enjoy the rest of your week.
Okay, you have to pay a royalty to Mr. Agee for using that phrase. Councilman Franklin, District 4.
Well, since there was a lot of discussion raised regarding property in District 4, I just want to hope that those individuals that raised the concerns about that property do their homework, because for the last several decades, we have a legal commitment with LAWA and FAA on not having that area for housing. Specifically, we've had several RFP, requests for proposals, on doing land use at those sites. We've actually tied down and had a disposition development agreement with a developer to work on that site, and it did not come in fruition. Now we're dealing with a chance of dealing with this blighted area that the city and the redevelopment agency owns, and we haven't received a dime on any revenue. We're looking at revitalization. Those that talk about District 4, think of the Darby-Dixon area that was off of Central Boulevard that was saturated with a number of apartment buildings, gas stations, car washes. If you remember those areas, you know what I'm talking about. That through the money of FAA and LAWA, we was able to revitalize, which now houses the Chili's, the Red Lobster, and those type of operations. Big money would not come to the city until they could prove that we've actually valued them, that there was really money here for the city of Inglewood. Those 16 acres that we invested in has proven very prudent for this city to prosper, which continues to cause other major developers wanting to come here. Now we're dealing with billionaires that want to come to the city, and they're willing to make sure that they're able to expedite their monies with this council that's on board with that are visionaries. And our mayor and council has been extremely positive with long visionaries. In fact, we've admonished our own mayor about these 3 a.m., 4 a.m. emails he sends us, because he's visionary and he's always thinking outside the box and was working due diligence for our benefits as Inglewood residents. And so just want to thank those that came to speak, thank the residents that are supporting this council, and most importantly, I want to thank all the city staff, because you make us look good, because we will reach it out to make sure that when we reach out to the investors, the developers, and long-term residents, that they are on board with us on a win-win situation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Franklin. Councilman Morales, District 3.
Thank you. You know, we always appreciate the comments that are out here. They're obviously becoming more common in regards to the potential Clippers arena. I can tell you that the only real connection between the need for housing and rent control and all of these issues and the actual Clippers arena, there is no real connection.
Yeah.
The only thing that exists is an opportunity to start that discussion. Okay, I get that. I get that there is a group that perhaps has started to organize in terms of dealing with this issue, starting that conversation in terms of the housing and the rent increases. But the truth is, it has nothing to do with this project, other than we're connecting it, saying, hey, there can be housing there. That's it. That's it. There's no real connection. In regards to using it for housing, if you really see where we're looking at, when we're a city has only a certain amount of extremely valuable commercial land to put revenue generating businesses on. We owe that to our residents. We owe it to them. We need to use that specific land that we deem valuable in terms of commercial enterprises for that purpose, so that we can generate enough revenue to give more and more services to you, our residents. Those are facts. Now, if anyone, including the folks that spoke, see this as an opportunity to start a conversation, okay, let's do that. But to suggest that because this project is coming in, rents have increases, that's not fair. Because this project is coming in, people will be displaced, that's not fair, because it's not true. It's not true. LA County, the average rent is $2,500. It's going up. LA County. We still are below that. Okay? So those are facts that exist. Now, in regards to how we are responding to that, we have a number of projects that we've put in our set-aside money for the housing around the city. In my district, we spent $13.4 million on the project at Region. How many units are those? Do we recall? No.
I think it's over 200 units at,
No.
at Region.
I'm
at
talking
Region.
about the
no,
one
he's
on
talking
Region.
about the up in
This was a few years ago.
Regent Square.
Right. 245 units. 245 units. That's in the past few years. We just broke ground. Alex mentioned it on a project again in my area in regards to senior housing. Okay, there'll be 40 units there, first class. I mean, the fact of the matter is no matter what we do in terms of putting in money into affordable housing, it's not going to be enough, because we can't put a dent in what's happening around the state of California. We will do our part, but whenever a project comes in, we can't leverage an entire project to solve all our problems. We'll go to, so in closing the housing discussion, I will say this is a good time to talk about it, but to connect it to the project, I personally don't see it. Now, in regards to community benefits, when a project like this comes out, and I thank you, I'm sorry, Mayor.
All right.
In regards to community project benefits agreements, we don't do a good job of touting the results we've gotten. We have some of the best benefits in terms of our developments for jobs that have existed. We currently have enough going on in terms of construction work where I know they're having trouble getting enough local residents to work there. And that goes, it's gone beyond in terms of the forum, in terms of the day-to-day operations. Those are things we can discuss, we can argue in terms of numbers all day long. But the truth of the matter is that what this is a good time to talk about it. But are those problems unique to the city of Inglewood? No, they're not. So until we get there, and we can have a real discussion, but outside of that, that's, and I didn't get a chance to say that instead of celebrating a really good part of our meeting, which was the budget and where the city has gone, it's kind of, I guess we're looking into a window into the future of when you have more of a lot of things, and that's in terms of opening up discussion. So thank you all for coming, Mayor. Sorry.
Okay. No, you took up a lot of things I was going to say, so that's great. But first of all, I want to tell you that have great respect for people that organize and make their feelings known. That's an important part of our democracy. But I would find it unfortunate or specious that at this time, at this place, for this parcel of land, that now it becomes critical that affordable housing can go there and nowhere else. The city of Inglewood has 931 affordable housing units between senior affordable housing and Section 8 vouchers. We have more affordable housing per capita than any city in the South Bay. We just enabled the creation of a housing trust fund that will allow us to accept donations from developers to put more money set aside to help us with our affordable housing building. In the last 5 years, we've built 3 affordable housing developments here in the city of Inglewood alone. That being said, we can't solve the housing problem for LA County here in Inglewood alone. And for anyone to think that we could build affordable housing solely on that land and it would only go to Inglewood residents, they never heard of the Constitution of the United States of America. You can't discriminate on people based on where they live. You can't tell people only people that live in Inglewood can live there. So let's just say that it was even 35% of it was affordable. That wouldn't make a dent into the problem in the county or the people that feel their rents, that they feel their rents are too high. Let's talk about the correlation between rents rising and property values raising and entertainment districts. Well, here's a news flash and here's a fact. The greatest correlation between the rising property values and the raising of rents in this county traditionally over time has been those cities where they have access to mass transit. Where mass transit comes through, the land becomes more valuable because it becomes more business valuable. And that's just a fact. We haven't played one football game in this city and won't play one until 2020. But rents have been going up here since the end of 2012. Housing values have been going up since the end of 2012. And you know why? Because the Green Line is coming through Inglewood. It'll connect us to the airport. You can come from the valley to Inglewood without setting foot in a car. That's reality, people. That's what's going on. And so what's happening here is happening everywhere that has access to mass transit. And to say that the city should take 22 acres and pay in excess of $38 million for it, and then trying to figure out a way that we can resell it to a developer to make affordable housing and make that pencil out, I would believe that's about economically impossible. And in addition to that, if we sell that land to a developer, well, it'll go to the FAA. You know what the FAA is going to do with it? They're going to turn the proceeds right back around to Inglewood to put into our residential sound installation program. If we buy it, we just lose $38 million. So there comes a point in time when you have to say, what are we really trying to accomplish here? Are we really trying to focus on the issue of affordable rents? Or are we now spending all of our time trying to kill a project? Because I would tell you, you know, the gentleman told me about, you know, the great little objective, and I said it never happened. As far as I'm concerned, it never happened. It'd be the biggest waste of money the city of Inglewood ever engaged in, and the city has wasted some money in the past. It doesn't make economic sense to take more than half the general fund and then throw away an opportunity to increase the general fund and have more money available to do affordable housing projects. We need affordable housing, but we don't need to waste opportunities to gain money to help us fund affordable housing projects. So I understand how people feel about rents, but to make this correlation that somehow because we have become successful as a city, that's a bad thing and we're responsible for the increase in rents, that's just a total falsity. They've been going up since the end of 2012. With that, I want to close the meeting in the name of an Inglewood resident, Marcia Peters, who passed pancreatic cancer last Friday. I want to close in the name of Margarita Rosa Pardo San Diego, the mother of Mario Inga, who works in our parking division. And with that, we're adjourned.